Cup champion. He's a former first overall draft pick and a heck of a golfer, and maybe even a really good homeschooler as well. He is Mike Modano, and he joins us on Ask 31. Mike, how are you today? Thanks so much for joining us.
I'm doing great. I'm doing real well. Good to see you guys.
Homeschooling or golf? What are you doing more of these days?
We tried the homeschooling after the first couple of weeks, and then we just kind of gave up on it. We're like, you know what? We're doing ABC Mouse on the iPad, and we'll go from there. So it was short lived. So we didn't. They're just moving into kindergarten, so it really wasn't too in depth of homeschooling, but nonetheless, we pass that on to the iPad.
I got to say, so I have one 8-year-old and I feel exhausted. We should explain that you and Allison, you have 4 kids, 5 and under. So, this is a challenge. How are you guys doing it?
I have no idea. We run on fumes. It's from 7 to 7 every day, but you got different kids coming at you. It's not like you don't get a break because one kid wants to go. The oldest boy, he loves fishing, so he wants to go fishing. One wants to swim. One wants to play tag. One wants to play hide and seek in the house. It's like, so it's like by the time we have dinner and a glass of wine, we're in bed by like 9 o'clock, just beat like a dog. So it's like we don't give enough credit to teachers how they keep these kids occupied. So they're paid way under the bar. So. But it's a lot of fun. But yeah, we can't wait for that school thing to kick back in.
I don't mean any. That's funny. I don't mean any disrespect to the Squaw Valley group or certainly the Miracle on Ice group. But Mike, how often do you think about your group of U.S.-born hockey players as being the group, and of course influenced by 1980 and the Miracle on Ice, winning the World Cup in '96? How much do you think back to? You know what? That was the beginning of the USA being a consistent superpower. Like at times they were great, 60 and 80. 1976 Canada Cup, that was a really underrated team. But it wasn't until your group came around that America consistently was a hockey superpower.
Yeah, the group that was with the World Cup had never really been together prior to that. There was bits and pieces of us that had been maybe to World Championships or the World Juniors at the time and stuff like that. So it really this group hadn't put together until the 96. And it wasn't until, in about a week, we had a week camp in Providence, Rhode Island. And it wasn't until then, after a couple of days, we just had so much fun. We were just blown away at the speed and the pace of the practices. And really how much we got along with one another off the ice. I mean, everybody really kind of set their own personal agendas and egos aside, for the team. Ron Wilson and Paul Holmgren were probably the best 2 guys to kind of handle all that. Ron was a lot of fun. So it was a lot of personalities, strong personalities to kind of handle. But I think we policed one another. I think, Chelly and Richter and Leach and Brett Hall and guys were really kind of we put a lot of pressure on one another. We did push one another, but going into that tournament playing against Canada, then you look at their lineup on paper, we're like, boy, and then we were behind the 8 ball after losing in Philly, having to go into the Forum and win 2 in a row. We just thought, here's the most amazing opportunity to kind of put these guys in their place in Montreal, the mecca of hockey. And it was just a rallying cry at that point. But to go back to the guys, it was really, that for that moment in the sun in the summer, there was never really that much fun that we had playing hockey at one time.
There's a couple of things I'd like to go off of that. First of all, let's talk about the group. Like you look at that group of guys from Kachuk, Guerin, Chelios, Doug Waite, Brett Hall, yourself. Like there are a lot of guys who like to have fun on the ice and off. Like you guys were a group that looked like you really enjoyed each other's company. You really enjoyed to have fun. On a lot of teams you played on, you were the guys who were interviewed a lot and seemed to like to be interviewed a lot. What was it like to be in that group of guys that were great players, but loved the attention and loved to have a good time?
I think that's really what made that moment and that particular tournament so unique, because it did happen at the end of the summer. I think everybody was really itching to get back to hockey. It's a couple months off, so I mean, you go into this type of hockey. No one's played a game all summer. Everybody's a little rusty. You're going into this type of tournament for a couple weeks, and every team was really loaded. The Russians were, the Swedes. I mean, everybody really had a stacked team. So, but like you said, we got along so well off the ice. We'd all go to lunch. We all went to dinner. I mean, there really wasn't much to do in Providence at the time anyway. So we were kind of forced to really kind of be around one another. We played a lot of golf. Guys would go out. So, yeah, we all loved having a good time. But, when we got to the rink, it was business as usual, and we'd have a fun time. And Ron would make it loose and fun. So it really wasn't, it was just, like I said, it was just that moment in time was just a great time to be on the team and part of U.S. hockey. And there really hasn't been a tournament like that for any of us since then.
Mike, the other thing I remember is Game 3, Canada went ahead, Adam Foote's goal, 2-1. Mm-hmm. And in my generation, we never saw Canada lose a game when they took a lead like that late in the game. And I remember talking about it with friends of mine when the U.S. won that game 5-2. We were like, we've never seen this before. Like, our best have never lost when they took a lead that late in a championship game. It was weird for us, I have to tell you.
It was. I mean, and you could hear a pin drop in that rink. Once it got to 4-2, I believe it was probably a couple empty netters, I think, at the end. But it was really, the Brett Hall goal was, that was reviewed, possibly a high stick. The Tony Amonte goal was reviewed, possibly being kicked in at the same time. He got a stick down. So there was a little bit of controversy on every goal that we scored at that point, because I think they wanted to make sure they got it right and there was no gray area in those goals that we were scoring late in the game. But yeah, I mean, when you look at their team and their defense and their goaltending, you figure, I mean, and it was not a lot of time left, 6 minutes left in the game or something. It was really kind of getting down to the nitty gritty there. But yeah, you figured their lineup, it was shut down. We weren't going to have a chance, but it was just, a little wrister from the point from Hatch, and Hully got an elbow on it or something, and then just kind of some lucky little bounces there from then on.
That group, that entire collection of American players, I'm sure you still have, U.S.-born players now that are in the NHL that'll come up to you like, man, you were my idol. You were my guy. I think all those American players still get it. Like, and consistently now, the U.S. is a juggernaut on the scene. What do you think when you see USA hockey today? When you see the players it sends out, the tournament wins, the championships, all of it. What does Mike Modano think? And do you take a little bit of pride in saying, you know what? A lot of these kids grew up watching me.
I think there's a little sense of pride there. I think it was a big timing thing too in the mid '90s, because you had, Gretz went down to L.A. You had the expansion of Anaheim. You had, the whole issue with us in Minnesota not quite going to San Jose, and so the Sharks were given an expansion team. So there was this rise of up and coming cities in the States where you didn't really expect hockey to really kind of flourish or have some success. And then you had the two teams in Florida, Nashville, Dallas. I think the expansion really kind of took an issue in itself, that kids saw hockey, popularity on TV grew. It was it was more fun to watch with the technology and HD coming into play, so you could really watch the puck and really kind of hone in on the plays. So there was a lot of little things that kind of added up. But I think expansion, I think, it's introduced kids to the game. And after that, you get a little bit more access to the game. You got more kids growing up playing, where now you got more talent coming out of nowhere. And, so you got the USHL, which was a good breeding ground for kids who didn't really quite know what to do at that level, either go to juniors or college. So you had a little bit of a buffer there for a couple of years. So a lot of good things have happened in the U.S. to kind of allow these kids to kind of flourish and grow up. And you had the national team in Ann Arbor, a lot of kids that come out of there. So a lot of good things which really helped the develop and growth of the game.
You know, when I ask U.S.-born players that were around for it, and you would have been quite young in 1980, everyone's got a story of where they were for the miracle on ice. Where was Mike Modano?
We were in Sarnia, Port Huron, actually, in the middle of a silver stick tournament. 10 years old, I believe, probably first year Pee Wee, I think, at that time. So we had just gotten done with our game, and I back then you really didn't know because the game was done earlier in the day and it got replayed later on at night. So obviously, with technology, we didn't really have any idea who had won unless someone had talked to someone on the phone. So everything just stopped dead in the tournament. We all just kind of got congregated to this one small little 20-inch, almost black and white fuzzy TV in the corner where, those 200 or 300 of us kids and parents all just kind of glued to this TV. So it was a pretty, I guess, emotional time for my parents, because I think our parents were more in tune with it because there was a lot of issues going in the political side with Russia and U.S. and the Cold War. So I think it was more of a rallying cry, this whole team coming together, a bunch of college kids that didn't expect to do anything in the tournament. And, Herb Brooks somehow pulling this team together and making them believe that they do have a chance at this one particular time.
Now, when you went on the ice for the first time after that, were you Mike Eruzione? Was that who you were?
I don't think I remember who these guys were. I remember, you remember Eruzione, you remember Jim Craig. I think those two names were really kind of synonymous with that whole tournament. But as you grew up and you got into your teenage years and you talked about maybe going to Canada and playing World Juniors, then those names kind of came up a little bit, and everybody started constantly talking about 1980 when we're on the American teams and the World Juniors going into Russia and Anchorage. So there was a lot of hype and talk about it. So, but to this day, Mike's, we bump into each other occasionally, and those guys, they've milked that 1980 team to death. They've all made a great living off that thing.
Mike, if
Smart.
I was on it, I would wear that medal around my neck going to the grocery store, walking into the driveway to get I would wear that medal everywhere if I was on that team.
I know. I would have too. I would be too.
We got a Facebook question. David asks, thoughts on your battles against the Oilers in the 90s? How frustrating was Kujo?
Kujo was tough, especially the one year that we went to 7 games in Dallas. And Marchand ended it on us. And he made some spectacular saves. Just one in particular on Neuendijk, I remember, just cold turkey right in this crease. He laid out and caught it in his glove. So, and then obviously I think a couple shifts later, Marchand scored. But yeah, I mean, what a phenomenal bunch of series. I've seen some recently, just sitting around watching some old throwback series against Edmonton. It was just and it was like prison rules. Anything went out there. You got away with murder out there. I mean, guys just, sticks were weapons, and holding and clutching and tackling. And we had to fight for every inch we got against those guys. And for 3 or 4 years in a row, we had to face them first round or second. So, and usually we're looking at our calendar, our schedule, and our standings come in the middle of March, end of March. We were 1 or 2 in our conference, and there's Edmonton, 9 or 10, bumping into 8 and 7. We're like, oh no, please God, not again. We gotta play these guys. And sure enough, here comes 2 and 7 or 1 and 8, and we got to go to Edmonton. And it was just a tough barn to play in. It was so loud. Yeah. I mean, some of us couldn't even talk to one another on the bench. It was so loud. But we would always say to ourselves going up on that flight, let's just make one trip out of this. Let's take care of business, head home. Let's try to split in Edmonton. So God forbid we don't have to go up there for a game 6 or something, because if we did, like in 96, I think we had to come back for 7. But, even the series that when we won 4 straight in 99, and then I think we won 5 the next year or something, they all felt like 7-game series. They were physically just would beat on us. So they were fun though.
Similarly, this one comes in from YouTube from Ozrin. Greetings from Croatia. Is there any goalie against whom he didn't like to play? Mike, who did you hate playing against? You already touched on Kujo. Follow up, which goaltender drove you the most crazy?
Oh boy. I think there was this transition of guys that, because I think Patrick Waugh in his time was very tall for a goalie. I think he was 6'1", 6'2", very big, but athletic. I think he was very tough, obviously, just a real competitor, Marty Brodeur. But then you got into these guys who were these 6'5" guys that started playing goalie. Luongo, Rene, Mike Smith, guys who would even go on their knees and still cover in the top corners because they were so tall and, they got cheaters all over the place. But still, if they go down in the butterfly, you only had a little bit of space up top and you had to make a great shot. So I think the bigger the goalies got, they were better athletes. They moved well and they were tougher to score on.
We've got a question also, James. Why number 9? What does it mean to you?
Man, I had 9 since I think my second year in hockey, organized hockey. I did 10 my first year because I, actually was. We watched a lot of Hockey Night in Canada, being in Detroit, so we caught a lot of Montreal games and Toronto games. So I did 10. I couldn't name the guy who I thought was brilliant in Toronto, but I wore the 10 the first year and then got into 9. So then, the whole Detroit, my dad said 9's available. You got Gordie Howe. He was a big Buchek fan because he was from Boston at the time. Right. So just moved into that. Lanny was in Toronto with 9. Mm-hmm. So that stuck. And then every time I went to a team, I went to PA and oh God, what was his name? He had graduated on from PA, so 9 was available. I went to Minnesota. Denny Maruk retired, so 9 became available in Minnesota. So it just it had just stuck after that second year of hockey.
Now, the guys who wore 10 for the Leafs around the time you would have been young would have been George Ferguson and John Anderson. Were either one of those guys the guy you're talking about?
I'm thinking maybe even Lafleur.
Oh, yeah, Montreal. He was definitely 10.
That just popped in my head. So we had a lot of Lafleur, a lot of Steve Shutt. Mm-hmm. Then as I got to figure out and watch games and kind of enjoyed it, I became a Sittler fan, obviously, in Toronto, just like the way he played. And then Detroit, the Wings were just a tough team to follow in the 70s. It was just a struggle until Stevie came in the early 80s. So then the Ilitches bought the Red Wings. So for those 70s years, they were a tough team to follow.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned Prince Albert a second ago. I want to ask you about Rick Wilson. That's a tough transition. And that's for an American kid to go play junior hockey at that time. It happens all the time now, but not so much when you did it. How crucial was Rick to your development in PA?
Rick was everything. I think not even only to PA, but my career. He's been such a great friend, taught me a lot. I think he really didn't really put a lot of pressure on me to come to PA. He just asked me if I wanted to come out for a long weekend, kind of driving me around town, which took 2 minutes. So, and kind of take a look at, what I liked and take a look at the school, meet some of the guys that might be playing the next year and play some drop in with some guys because camp was getting ready to start. So, I think I was at the age, I just didn't care where I was going. I would have went to Russia or wherever. I just wanted to play. I was just itching to get some higher competition. I knew I had to wait in Detroit for a couple more years in order to go to college. So I was too young to get recruited. So I just was biting at the chance to go play there. So like you said, not many kids had at that time even gone out west. A couple had gone to Quebec, which I thought I was going to go to because I knew LaFontaine really well and Jimmy Carson, and they had all done the Verdun route. So I was thinking about Quebec, but Rick came calling, and it just was, it turned out to be a blessing in disguise. And then he came to join us in Minnesota after a couple of years there with me, and then we were together for a good 16, 17 years. So I was pretty lucky to have him around.
Minnesota, you play your first couple of NHL games, 1989 playoffs games. Is it 2-3 or 3-4 against the St. Louis Blues? You played a pair,
I
making
think
your NHL debut in the playoffs, Mike.
I think Fage waited till we went to St. Louis to throw me in those 3 and 4, and I still to this day don't understand why I was thrown in there. I was actually had broke my wrist in Brandon in the All-Star game. Just a fluky little deal. I kind of rammed into somebody, collided, and just kind of broke my wrist. So after a few weeks, they're like, "Why don't you come up to Minnesota, hang out?" And so I came out, worked out with some of the guys, got a little bit familiar with everybody, hanged around the rink and everybody, and then started skating. So, and then Page had a great idea to throw me in Game 3 in St. Louis, and which I was just, still had the cast on my wrist. I could barely handle the puck and the stick, and so I was useless. I don't know what he was thinking, but that was my first 2 games, so that was very not the brightest moment of my early career.
Well, this is the way you got to look at it, Mike. They were 1-1 with you. They were 0-3 without you. That's the way you got to look at that, because that's how that series went. Last night, Buffalo on TV there, they aired Game 1 of the 1999 Stanley Cup Final, which is the one where Jason Woolley scored in triple overtime. Mm-hmm. Now, I just want I wanted you to talk a bit about that series. Like, that was Hasek at his peak. Mm-hmm. Buffalo was. You're going to have to, you talked about fighting for every inch. You're going to have to fight for every inch through us to even get a shot at him. And you were hurt. You were pretty badly hurt. And you got a lot of credit there for playing with a bad wrist injury. And just how badly hurt were you, and how hard was that series?
It was tough because we had just come off the Colorado series, which was pretty much a drag race. It was just up and down, chances at both ends, just a ton of talent at both sides of on both sides of the team. And then you run into Buffalo, and it was just tight and no room and stingy. So if you did get through, you had to deal with Hasek. So, the opportunities were just kind of few and far between, and losing that first one was just a heartbreaker. So we knew we had to split at home at least and get Game 2. And I think it was more towards beginning of the third period, I got pinched off at the blue line from Todd Warner and just kind of caught my wrist and just jammed it a little bit. I didn't think really much of it. Got an X-ray, and it was cracked a little bit of the radius off the tip. So I just assumed I was done and was just mortified. Parents were there. Everybody, we just thought, this can't be the way this finishes off. So we went home, woke up the next day. It was kind of tender and sore, but I'm like, I thought the thing was just going to be unusable and just stiff and just over with for me. So went to the rink. We kind of experimented with some little cast, and we actually shot it up just to see if I could shoot and skate at practice, and it felt really good. So on to Buffalo we went, and then it felt really good. So, but Tony Herkick was Herkus stepped in on that line with Hully, and they scored that goal to win Game 2. So we went to Buffalo and moved on from there. But like you said, Elliotte, it was just a hard fought, series, low scoring. You barely got any room, no shots, no quality chances whatsoever. And so it was really a grind. And we knew coming into Game 6, if we didn't get this thing over with, because Hully had an MCL, I think Benoit Hogue had an ACL, he was done. My wrist, I think guys were just depleted. So we thought if this goes to Game 7, we might be in trouble in Dallas. So it went on, and then, the rest was history with Hully's goals. So that thankfully that got over with quick.
What do you remember most about the celebration, the party that night?
I think it was the goal. Because Hully and I were so close to one another. We were right in the crease, and he was kind of twisting around with the puck that got shot in from Yuri Letnin, and he got twisted. So, and I kind of had a beat on it in his legs. It was kind of coming towards me. And I teased Brett Hull to this day that I was like this far from dragging it out of his feet and put it in Hasek's, but I don't know if that would have counted because everybody figured that Brett was in the crease, but he was in there with the puck, and that's a whole nother show that we could go into on that one. But I teased him. I was about that way far away from dragging it out and putting it by him and scoring the goal. But he twisted on me. He blocked he deflected my stick out of his legs, and then he kicked it up and scored. So, but after that, I mean, I just was just so thankful it was just over. I was like, oh my God, I just wanted to curl up in a ball for like a month and not do anything. And it was just total relief because I was with the team so long, from start to finish, and there's so much expectations on the team. And for myself personally, I think it was just more gratification, just saying, hey, we sought out for what we wanted to do in Vail. We came through. We were President's Trophy. We got through the playoffs, and I hope that I paid back for what they drafted me to bring a championship to them. But it was just total relief. We just sat in the locker room afterwards, and we just thank God it was over.
Oh, I think the Stars franchise, Jeff, would say it got its money's worth out of Mike Modano. I don't think you have to worry about that.
I don't think you have to give anything back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those next 2 weeks were a little bit of a blur because normally when the cup comes home with you, you have the parade. It kind of goes back to Toronto, and then Philip starts doing his tour with the cup and making his rounds. And so for some reason, I don't know what, but Tom Hicks had a few events in Dallas, and it was kind of stretched over a couple week period. So it ended up the cup stayed in town. So we had it every night for about 14 days straight. And and by the time that was done, and I don't think it's ever been done before, after that or before, and we just thought, get this thing out of town. We're going to be hurt until next Christmas if this thing doesn't get out of town quick. So we were like, Uncle, we're done. So we had to get it out of town because we had some guys who were some gamers off the ice too. So they kind of led the way in that sense.
I want to ask you. That's a great story. I want to ask you about your coach in '99, Ken Hitchcock, and Ken, always has rules for different players. I remember talking to one winger on one of Ken's teams, and he said Ken would always tell me if I can't touch the boards with my stick, I'm out of position. Other players in the offensive zone weren't allowed to direct the puck towards their own net with a pass. Did he have any rules like that from Mike Modano? Like, they can't have any sort of pet ideas like, hey, Mike, never do this?
I think he did in a sense, but he would always kind of, I guess, make me feel like I'm just as responsible and my game should be just as technique as the other guys, being smart with the puck and putting it in good areas. Don't be high percentage plays, and don't do anything foolish. So he would call me out in that sense, but I think in the back of his mind, he said, I'm going to give him a little space if he gets the blue line and he's able to become lateral or something with the play, and he's going to be able to make a play. So in that sense, I think he did give me a little longer leash than some guys, but he always expected us to play the same way without the puck. That's for sure. I think with it, we were kind of given a little bit of a longer leash to kind of make some plays and make something out of it. If it didn't turn out, he expected us to back check as hard as we did if we did have the puck. So, but yeah, he let guys know if they had the shorter leash or the longer leash. But in the big picture, big scheme things, if he was hard on me and expected me to play this way and in our own zone and defensively and be really responsible, I think everybody else took note of it. So I think he would make examples of me in the locker room with the guys just so that he would make sure that no one's exempt from getting liberties from him.
So here's a question from Jamie. Based on that, how would Mike Modano try and shut down McDavid?
Ooh.
Oh, well, I would try to catch him early before he got going. I think he would just kind of get in his way. I think he's a phenomenal guy. I think if you get him any separation, he's gone. You give him time and space, obviously, like with any top guy this day and age in the game, they're gonna kill you. I just go back to the guys that gave me problems were the ones that really were good skaters. I think Wes Walls was a real good skater. Esa Tikkanen, I was throwback. He was a good skater. Tom Marchand, these guys who could move up and down with me and just kind of hang with me were tough, and not a lot of guys can do that with Connor. So I think that's where he's kind of separates himself from everywhere else. anybody else, and it's usually a collection of 5 trying to slow him down. But yeah, I mean, with Connor, I would try to get him in his own zone as early as possible and just keep him between him and the net.
So here's my last one for you, Mike, and then Jeff will wrap up. But so you look better than both me and Jeff, but you're older than both me and Jeff. You're a month away from your 50th birthday. Now, you're an executive now. You're in Minnesota. But like, first of all, I can't believe you're going to be 50 and you look this good. That's number one. But number two, like, aside from being a parent, we're talking to a guy, Stanley Cup champion, Hall of Famer, World Cup champion, Olympic silver medalist. Like, when you look at the rest of your life, what are your goals to accomplish?
Oh man. I think when I look back at the way things have unfolded in my life, as far as being married and kids after hockey, I feel when I think about kids and how much they need your attention, everything, I just don't know how guys do it having kids and playing. I know why guys would play forever if they had kids, just so they could get trips and training camp away from town and road trips. I understand that completely now, that why guys would stay and play until they rip the skates off the foot. But I think just being trying to be a fun dad and try to stay healthy and in shape so I can stay up with these guys for next however long I have. But I think that's first and foremost. I think just watching them grow and being there, being present and having fun and enjoying that aspect of my life now, because like I said, I don't know. I was so tunnel vision with my career and selfish in a sense, where I was just strictly hockey and that's all I focus on. I just don't know if I would have had time or enough time in the day or whatever to commit to kids and everything else. But now I've been thankful and enjoy it every day now. So I think that's in sense. And I think it's some as this role with Minnesota keeps growing. I don't know what that's going to curtail as time moves on, but I've enjoyed my time working with Craig and Billy Guerin and the whole staff in Minnesota has been great. All the departments have been phenomenal, a lot of fun. So I've enjoyed that. So how that parlays into something down the road, we'll wait and see. But I just now it's just enjoying every day and working out and trying to stay young just to kind of keep up with everybody.
Fatherhood's a great answer. It's a great answer.
It is. Okay, I want to end on something I've always wanted to ask you, Mike, and this has probably been the only venue that I can. The vignettes you did for WWF with Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig. Take us back to that. How did that? I remember watching those and I'm thinking, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. Mike Modano and Kurt Hennig. How did that come together?
Well, back in that time, there was a lot of wrestlers that headquartered and lived in Minnesota.
Yep.
You had the Warrior, Jester the Body, Mr. Perfect. I mean, there was a half a dozen guys that were located in Minnesota and lived there, and that would come to a lot of the games, actually, that were big hockey fans. And so one of the guys who put this deal together was friends with Mr. Perfect. So he asked me, he's like, hey, Mr. Perfect does these skits and these little cameos. Can we do something? And so we tried to put something together, and then I look back at it now and I was like, God, that thing turned out so awful. Why didn't
no, it was so good.
It's great.
No, it was great.
Take a few more takes because it was just
it was great. It was perfect.
Yeah, it was
pardon the pun.
It was just painful. So, but Mr. Perfect was great. All those guys were a lot of fun. But yeah, that was one thing that just Google and the internet will never let you live down some of these things I've done, and it's just a shame.
When your kids are older and you show them that, you're going to be the coolest dad ever. You really will. Yeah.
We'll see about that.
Guaranteed. That was a lot of fun. This has been a lot of fun. Mike, best of luck. Look forward to talking to you under much better circumstances when the NHL is back on and we're all talking about action on the ice. A huge part of hockey you've been. Elliotte ran down the resume. It's impressive, as are you. Thanks so much for stopping by today.
Thank you, guys. Jeff, Elliott, take care. Be safe as well.
You too.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks,
To
Mike.
you as well. Our guest has been Hockey Hall of Famer, 21 seasons in the NHL, Stanley Cup champion, World Cup champion, Mike Modano. Thanks for joining us on Ask 31.